gentlemen, please be standing for the first mayoral chamber, Councillor Mohammed Aslan.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Can we have and switch off? Yes.
Sorry, I'm going to apologize.
Will we switch our phones off or put them on silent? Thank you. Meeting of the Council, Thursday, 26th of September 2024, in the Council Chamber at Nelson Town Hall. Let us start by thanking and welcoming first meeting, full council, Paul Preston. Could we go with the apologies, please? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, can I give apologies for Councillor Safar Elling and Mohammed Alam?
Nadeem?
Apologies from Councillor David Colvin-Price, Sarah Colvin-Price, Kieran McLachlan, David Galea, Tom Onrod, Richard O'Connor.
Next, now we go for declaration of interest. Members are reminded of the legal requirements concerning the declaration of interest. A member must declare a disclosable pecuniary interest which he/she has in any item on the agenda. A member with a disclosable pecuniary interest in any item may not participate in the discussion of the matter of the meeting and must not participate in any vote taken on the matter at the meeting. In addition, the Council's standing orders require a member with a disclosable pecuniary interest to leave the room where the meeting is held while the discussion or vote takes place. Next, minutes of the Council to approve has a record.
Question.
Yes, Mr. Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I, first of all, say I took advice in terms of the motions on winter fuel payments. Our monitoring officer advises that those of us who have been or would be in receipt of winter fuel payments need not disclose a prejudicial pecuniary interest. So we don't need to bother about that one. I will declare a personal interest in item 4 and withdraw from the room on that item.
Yes.
I'd like to declare interest on item number 14, please.
So this, what the interest to the Councillor Adnan?
Prejudice interest, please.
As
I'm a tax license holder.
thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just on the same item, I'm not sure if you've taken advice, but would you need to declare an interest yourself? I'm not sure if you've spoken to Howard. We've not need to. That's fine.
So could we go back to approve as a correct record or otherwise the minutes of the council meeting held on 18th July 2024. Number 4, member code of conduct, Councillor Reid. The council is asked to consider the sanctions recommended by the Standard Hearing Committee on 28 August. So I've got a note here from Councillor Vic. Following the decision of the extended hearing. I apologise for breaching the council's code of conduct, and his name's on the paper as well, so I'll give it to Mr. Howard. Yes?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to clarify item 4, please, if I could. As a member of the Standards Hearing Committee, it states that the council is asked to consider the sanctions recommended by the Standards Hearing Committee. I was under the impression that that was already given as a given, and the apology will be accepted. Is that correct?
Mr. Neil?
Good evening. I'm also on the Standards Committee. I'd like to say two things. The first thing is we're happy with the actual result, but we were expecting a written apology. Is that on the list? Yeah. So is there a time scale? We have a written apology. I haven't seen it. My apologies. And the second thing is, and I know the rules will disagree with me, it was my first time on the Standards Committee, and I found it a little bit, I'm just going to pick the word out, harsh, because councillors, judging councillors, is not good. It's not a good thing, because most of us are friends, and you're judging somebody that's your friend, an old working councillor, whatever, and you're judging them, and in my view, it's wrong. It should be an independent body. So, you know, it's making a decision on their actual life, on where their job, what they do as a councillor. And I think it's a lot of pressure putting on councillors. You know, you have to judge your friend or whatever. So I think it's difficult. It was difficult for me. I'm not going to say too much about Mr. Whip, but I know he gets his hands dirty. So, you know, I don't want to judge people. And, you know, it was a bit of a, I'm not going to say the word, it wasn't a proper meeting. The lady that was prosecuting Mr. Whip wasn't advised on, she had to give an assessment of him and the sanctions we can press on Mr. Whip. She wasn't aware of that. So the meeting was a little bit ill-prepared, in my view.
Thank you, Neil.
There's more. So I'd like to ask this council if we can get an independent body to judge our friends.
Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the last point the Council Butterworth is raising, an independent group of people to assess us. I don't think the legislation allows that to happen in terms of the Standards Committee. And I noticed points about not judging his peers, but if you look in all walks of life, right up to members of Parliament, they are judged by their peers. I mean, an independent group of people could come, they don't know how councils operate, or how the council operates, and take things out of context. But I don't think we, as a council, or full council meeting, can change the legislation in terms of standards committees.
I just wanted to make a point.
Councillor Yasser.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, there's a few things Councillor Butterworth said. The first, I think he started off with saying he wasn't really happy with the result, and maybe that's why he wants to change the system. Now, the result is the result. I think it was a fair and balanced committee. Councillor Whip would also say he's not happy with the result. So I'm not sure where we go from that. In terms of the independent panel, I think in principle that's probably a good idea, but it all costs money. When our Councillor Iqbal said, we're going to get independent people, it took, I think, 3 or 4 hours that day. I left a bit earlier than I think left about 9 after giving evidence. And I think I agree with you that the meeting itself was, I'm not sure which word you used because... sorry?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch what the word you described. Or I'm not sure what that means. But I'm assuming it's not necessarily a positive thing. But the reason that was that, you know, I was giving evidence at that meeting. Councillor Ashraf was, Councillor Ali was, and a few others. And I think I probably agree with that description, whatever that means, because there were, when giving evidence, there were people at the back who were, I think heckling is probably the word, volatile. So So I think perhaps the system needs to change where actually it should be the panel, and if members of the public want to come, or councillors want to come, they respect people who want to give evidence. They might not like what's being said, but that's someone's genuine reflection or recollection of what happened. So I think, coming to your last point about peers judging peers, and Councillor Iqbal said it happens on walks of life in the legal field. Lawyers, judges are normally judging lawyers, and this is the system we're in, Councillor Butterworth. But I think that we can't go behind what the committee found, but I think, accept Councillor Wick's apology. I've not seen the apology, but Mr Mayor's read that out, I think, and I think we should move on. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Yes.
Right. Thank you, everyone. So we accept the apologies. Can we ask Mr. Wick to come in?
Go over, go.
Next, we're on item number 5, announcement from the Mayor and the Leader of the Council. So from my side, I'll stand up, and also I may, as the Mayor of Pendle, on behalf of all councillors, take this opportunity to congratulate Pendle Fullridge resident Mr. Greg Stevenson on winning his rowing gold medal at the 2024 Paris Paralympic Games. A tremendous performance. Thank you for highlighting Pendle on the global stage. And the other one, may I also, as a mayor of Pendle, congratulate the Rapid Titanium in Burnoswick, and the ceremony took place a day ago, and the award of King was given by Lord Lieutenant Mrs. Amanda Parker, JP. So, the King's Award for Enterprise 2024 International Trade. So that's another achievement as achieved by the Pendle. As being a small firm, it was great also be there. That was magnificent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to echo with yourself on congratulating Greg Stevenson with the gold medal at the Paris Paralympics. I think that's great for Fullridge. It's great for Pendle, and I know Fullridge are going to recognise that within their council, parish council, and I think we will, as a Pendle council, we will also recognise that in the near future and celebrate the success. That puts us on the map in good ways. And this is another gold medal. We've had a history of people winning gold medals at Olympics and Paralympics. So yeah, it's great to hear that.
So anything else? Right. Number 6, questions of the notices from the public to the leader. No? Questions on notices by members to the leader, a committee, chairman or a representative, an outside body on matters not otherwise on the agenda. No? Report by the leader on the work of the executive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move the report as set out.
Councillor Nadeem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just got a couple of questions on, firstly, in terms of long-term plan for town investment. Just want to ask the leader whether the government has come back to us with regards to funding which was sponsored by the previous government. And related to that, there was a motion at the previous full council regarding meeting up with our new FD Pendle and Clitheroe. Just wondering if that meeting has taken place, and if so, that this issue specifically
Mayor.
Mr. Stone?
On the strategic leisure review, we wrote that the leader could give us an indication of the outcome of discussions that were held with town and parish councils in relation to supporting leisure facilities, and also on our item perhaps an indication of the outcome of the implications of bringing leisure services back in-house. And on the Higham Village Hall piece, it's something that Barrowford and Western parishes were very keen to support, but unfortunately was beyond our budget. I noticed that you will be submitting a bid for alternative funding. Could you tell us who you'll be submitting that bid to and what the outcome is? Thank you.
Mr. Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to just highlight the second one up on the first page there. Could I ask the Leader of the Council if he agrees with me that it is very welcome to have this roof repair work going ahead at the leisure centre at Corn. This is work that was axed a few years ago under a former administration. Is the Leader of the Council aware that the cost of the work has doubled since the estimates were prepared under the former administration? And does he agree with me that it is very welcome to get on with that work, but furthermore, does he agree with me that it's a bit unfortunate that it's waited until chucking it down for that work to be done? In terms of the Higham Village Hall, Chair, Mr. Mayor, the executive agreed that we would assist the Village Hall Committee in putting grant applications in elsewhere. Otherwise, it would fall to the area committee or perhaps the parish council in question, but we would certainly assist with putting those applications in. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to comment about the strategic leisure review. It's ongoing work, but I think the Leader of the Council will confirm that we're just going through all the processes and eventually there'll be an outcome.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, in relation to the long-term plan, we have no further information or updates. We have requested our MP, who we met it was last Friday, Leader and Deputy Leader met with him, and we raised quite a number of issues with him in relation to Pendle, and one of those was the long-term plan, and he will take that up with the development ministers and hope we have a positive response to that. From our point of view, we have at the board, that's a long-term board, and also with the MP, kind of very strongly asked them, this is this funding continues, because we have done very extensive consultation. We've raised people's expectations. We said we're doing a lot of things that will bring sustainability for the next 10 years. So it's important that we do follow that through, because we have a plan. It's ready to be submitted, once we get the more guidance from the government, we will proceed with that. In relation to strategic leisure review, that's ongoing. It was discussed at the last week's executive committee meeting. We're looking at all the different options. There's sharing information. We have given the assurance that we will keep all the 3 leisure centres open, which I know differs from the Conservative party thinking. one of the things with the that's come back from the review is that there is a 4-year lease remaining on the with the agreement that we've got with the Pendle Leisure Trust. So at this stage, like I said, we're looking at all the different options available and to continue to explore those. In relation to Highland Village Hall, I think Councillor Rick has kind of answered that. We said that the last executive committee meeting that we will assist in applying for external funds and grants. And I agree with Councillor Rick with the corn sports roof that's been replaced. It's a brand new one. I think it would have cost a lot less than it actually is at this stage, had it been done when it was originally asked. And again, it's the shared administration that's delivering, rather than the Conservatives who have then become derelict and not taking any action.
Thank you. Next is item number 9, report by the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Mr. Mayor, I move the report.
Next is number 10, mayoralty. Mayor. Council is advised that the deputy mayor for 25-26 is to be selected from the consulting group. Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to nominate Councillor Arnott, I'm sure will do an excellent job.
Sorry, is that Councillor Nadeem?
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, yes.
Nadeem Ahmed.
I wasn't sure which one you were.
Right. So, Councillor Nadeem Ahmed is selected from the Conservative Party 25-26 deputy mayor. Number 11, Capital Program 24-25. At the meeting of the executive on 1st August 24, it was resolved the council be recommended to approve the revised capital program for 24-25 as set out in Appendix C attached to the report. Councillor Whip.
Mr. Mayor, can I move the recommendation?
Second that.
Thank you. Next is number, could we have a vote on that? All in favour? Are you still counting? Could we have the hands up so it makes it easy?
Everybody. So,
Okay. Next is number 12, environmental health enforcement policy. At a meeting of the executive on 1st August 24, it was resolved the council be recommended to approve the revised environmental health enforcement policy. Mr. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I move the recommendations?
Could we have the vote? Who's approve? All in favour? Next is disabled facilities grant policy. At a meeting of the executive on the 1st of August 24, it was resolved the council be recommended to approve the revised disabled facility grant policy. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This policy was approved at the executive. It's a fundamental shift from what we've had before. And as an example, you will also be aware that there are a number of people waiting for disabled facility grants, but the cost of the work is quadrupled. So instead of our discretionary pot that we previously had, it was up to 10,000. The executive have doubled that to 20,000. And officers are looking at innovative ways to try and get the waiting list down as quickly as possible. So there's the council support recommendation.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll happily second that, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I support the revisions to the policy as set out. I wanted to comment about the funding for disabled facilities grants and the fact that residents in Pendle are severely disadvantaged because of the unfair way in which DFG funding is allocated across, in this case, Lancashire. And as a result of that, despite similar demographics, we find that other authorities in the Lancashire area have, well, double the amount of funding that is available to Pendle. And as a consequence, the availability of the resources, which ultimately come from government, is inadequate to meet the need that we have. And I think we've all got harrowing, as councillors, all of us have got harrowing examples of where people desperately in need of adaptations are unable to get them, or they take an inordinate length of time for them to come through. So, Mr Mayor, I think agreeing this revised policy is an opportunity to reiterate the need for changes to the distribution of the funding that allows these grants to be made in the first place. And it is an issue that was picked up with the MP at the meeting that the Leader and I and the Chief Executive had with him last Friday. And I sincerely hope that we'll be able to see some changes in the very near future in order for residents to have a far better outcome.
Councillor Neil.
Good evening. I agree with everything Mr Whip said. The most important thing is speed. Just a few days ago I had to move 2 disabled people into accommodation and it wasn't fit. And the money was there, but they couldn't get the money to the people that organise the wet rooms and that sort of thing. And it's all about speed. These people can't wait. And an old lady moved into an accommodation that is not fit for her. But we're coping with anything done. But most of all, is if the money's there, we have to dish it out quite quickly. And we need to look at that. Speed is everything for these people. Thank you.
Councillor Mead.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to support this recommendation. However, I think the concern I have is that this problem of having the funding or people having to wait over 12 to 18 months, this has not just happened overnight. This has been quite a number of years, and I've previously said this to our leader as well, that we really need to look at this. And I think one of the things I've found is that I think lack of staff as well. I think the staff are being really hard worked here. There's lack of staff and they're under a lot of pressure. I know we've got another girl who started doing the shower side of it, but I think if we can ask for, I know Councillor Iqbal with the portfolio said that officers are looking at innovation in different ways of actually, trying to move work forward. But I think can we ask for a report to come back and see what actions are happening to put the weighting this down? Because I know, okay, I agree with what Councillor Wick said, we don't get as much funding as say Burnley or other areas, but the funding we have, our constituents are having to wait longer than 12 months, 18 months just for shower facilities or extensions downstairs. And I'm sorry to say this can't continue. I was with a resident the other day and she's been waiting over 12 months and she's spending most of her time now in hospital, and this can't continue, Mr Mayor.
I think you also, as a councillor, I've been, and there are a lot of people, not just 1 year, they've been waiting for a few years, over 3 years, and they're still waiting, lack of staff, and it needs speeding up within the year. And I agree with Mr Neil and Councillor Ashton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, just to make a point about the... So, our allocation funding wise, it's a formula that's out of date. I think it's been used for the last 15 years, and you know, I became the leader, and this was one of my priorities, working with the like I said, with the shared administration. So we took a report to district leaders of actually county council, and we raised this issue back in February, and tried to ask Lancashire County Council to look at the formula that's change that so that the new formula is more fair, and the funding that's allocated is more fair and equal. And ideally, that funding goes where it actually is needed. Because currently there are authorities and other boroughs that get double the funding, and on top of that, the funding is sometimes, because they've got too much funds, they don't actually use it for the purpose it's actually meant to be for DFGs. They actually spent elsewhere. So I think that needs to be looked at, because of at the time, local elections and then the general election, also the devolution issue. Things have been postponed, but it's, hopefully at the next this leaders meeting I will get that up as the leader of the council. In relation to staffing, I think extra staff have been appointed over the last couple of months. We've had regular meetings with officers trying to bring that waiting list down, and that waiting list has come down considerably, and the staff are working very hard. I think there was mention of the waiting list, some people wait for over 3 years. That is not, to my knowledge, that is not true. I think the waiting list actually is considerably a lot lower, probably a couple of 7-8 months at this stage. So there might be some complex cases where they for whatever reason, because of the funding aspect, because they need additional funding, because the housing costs have increased, or some other element that's probably causing that. But from our point of view, we are trying to deliver the services as soon as we can. And one other way we kind of try to speed the process up as well is once we get like an application, previously what happened was that application wasn't considered until your name came top of the list. So now what happens is an application comes through within a week or two, or as soon as we can. We look at the application, look at it's because the means tested, look at all the the needs, and if it meets the requirements, then they can stay on the waiting list, and works get progressed. If they don't meet them, if they don't meet the requirements, then they come off the list. So people are not waiting for, like say, a couple of months, and then they find out they're not actually entitled to that new DFG allocation.
Thank you. Next is number 14. Could we have a vote? Yes, Nadine.
I agree with almost everything that's been said, and it is a really difficult and complex issue that has been ongoing for many years. I agree for far too long, and people have been waiting for these grants. And I'm pleased with some of the actions that are being implemented, and hopefully that will make a difference in terms of delivery to our residents who really genuinely need these services. One question which I have is, in terms of the discretionary funding, which has been increased if it goes through now, from 10,000 to 20,000, the potential impact that may have on the overall funding. So that's just one slight issue. I'm not sure if anyone could answer that question. But other than that, I'm happy with it.
Thank you. Councillor Iqbal.
Yeah, just to respond to Councillor Ahmed, I mean, clearly that extra money is coming out of the general pot of the disabled facilities grant. But if a job is waiting to be done and they've got a shortfall of, let's say, £15,000, rather than that person suffering, the decision was made and hopefully will be agreed tonight that we get those blockages cleared, because those are the cases that have been waiting for months and months and months.
Would we go for the vote?
Yeah.
All in favour? Thank you. Number 14, refusal of driver's license consideration at the removal of section 5.4 from the taxi licensing policy. to consider the attached report from the Assistant Director of Planning, Building Control and Regularity Services. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I move the recommendation as set out in the report? I think the justification for the policy being the way it is a good one, but I also see the need for some amount of discretion if that's required. So I accept the recommendations and move that we all accept them. Thank you.
Neil?
Yeah, I'd like to second this motion, just for people that don't know, if a taxi licensee order is refused, he has to wait 12 months for him applying for a new one. But this policy will give the discretion to the actual taxi officers to grant the licence sooner. So I will second the motion. Thank you.
We go for the vote. All in favour? Thank you. Next is number 15, Hackney carriage license for horse drawn carriage. To consider the attached report from the Assistant Director of Planning, Building Control and Regulatory Services. Neil? Tom?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the recommendations.
Nay.
Same thing again. This young couple are branching out, doing horse-drawn carriages for weddings and proms and that sort of thing. Earlier, they applied for a licence and they could only charge £40 as an active carriage licence. Now that's been revoked now, and now they can charge up to £400. So I second the motion. Thank you.
All in favour? Thank you. Next is Pendle Local Plan 4 Edition. Same again, to consider the attached report from the Assistant Director of Planning and Control and Regulatory Service. Further, two recommendations that are made at the executive meeting held on 19 September 24. Tom?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Our officers at Pendle in the planning team have worked very, very hard to get to this stage now. We're at a critical point with changes in changes with government, fundamentally, around local plans. And if it's not decided tonight to go ahead with what we've got now and what we've consulted on and what this council has built, it will unfortunately have to be scrapped. So it's imperative tonight that we take a positive decision on the way forward. In the local plan working group, which is all party, as well as the executive held last week, it was agreed that this is a plan we can take forward and we should take forward. And I move that we do so tonight. Mr. Mayor, with the changes to the NPPF, Pendle Council would see a per annum figure of over 300 houses built in Pendle. That is unattainable. It disregards all demographic data, it disregards economics, and it's a ludicrous idea that we can build that many. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Sebastian?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I will second the local plan as set out by Councillor Campbell. This local plan seeks to provide the right amount of development in the right locations for the borough, whilst at the same time protecting the key ecological landscape and heritage assets it enjoys. The plan recognises the role neighbourhood plans play in steering the right development to the right places in the borough. It is strongly supported by an evidence base and is underpinned by a thoroughly sustainable appraisal. Our test approach ensure that it contributes to the sustainable growth of the borough. Development will be concentrated in the M65 corridor, which has the majority of our population and has the main transport infrastructure capable of dealing with the needs that will arise over the planned period. This will be supported by appropriate levels of growth in West Kirkland, with rural areas seeing more growth to sustain their communities. A housing supply of 148 houses per annum means that the population of the borough will have the houses they need, whilst not buying necessarily to the green fields that contribute to high quality environment we enjoy. The plan will direct development away from our best environmental areas and will continue to protect the forest of lowland national landscape. 51 areas will be included as local green space, areas of special quality valued by local people. It also directs new development away from areas most vulnerable to flooding, and equally as importantly requires new developments not to contribute to oversaturation. The plan takes a large stride towards development seeking to achieve net zero carbon. We also recognise the challenges that developers face with delivering viable developments by setting appropriate levels of requirements for developer contributions on such matters as affordable housing. The plan seeks to improve not only the physical environment, but to improve the health and well-being of people here in Pendle. It encourages the provision of facilities for recreation and seeks to limit takeaways in open air. Seeks to limit new takeaways in open air to our schools. It encourages tourism to add to our economy, but only when it does not impact on the local environment. And as Councillor Tom Ripp says, it is important that the local plan is approved by the council tribes. Otherwise, we may miss the submission timescales in the NPPF. So I recommend that all the council support the plan. Thank you.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to echo the comments that have been made by the leader and others. It is, however, worth pointing out that the changes to the standard methodology, which have been derived by the new government, which have produced a figure, a recommended figure for Pendle of 382 units per annum, are absurd. And indeed, Pendle in its history, and Mr. Watson mentioned the working group, Pendle in its history has never produced anywhere near 382 units in a single year. So to have this kind of burden imposed upon us without any regard to the local situation, the Pendle's demographic need, its economic development, is literally an absurdity. So I believe the council has been put in a very difficult position by the changes to the NPPF and by the government's timescales, and it is only appropriate, as others have said, that we go with the local plan, which we work very hard on, and we have to try and get that through and hope that some sanity prevails at some point in the new government's desire to impose ludicrous housing targets on councils. Thank you.
Councillor Witt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The the local plan that we, if it's passed tonight, we're going to consult upon, could be very short-lived, because if we get it through the planning inspectorate, which isn't guaranteed, there will be a requirement under the new Labour government's requirements to review it in short order. So, although we may afford some protection for our valuable greenfield sites in the short to medium term, there isn't a guarantee that that will hold for a longer period. And I know Councillor Tom Whip and the others people in the working group, Mr. Watson and his team, have worked really hard to accommodate the wish of this council to have a realistic housing number are supported by the evidence that there is. The 148 figure, the demographics of the area support that. The government's figures are based on a very blunt instrument which just uses the number of dwellings that you've already got and expresses that as a percentage that you've got to expand by. I remember the time when there was an excess of new houses here in Pendle, and as a consequence the developers couldn't sell them. A lot of them ended up being rented out because they just couldn't shift them. And I fear that if we went to a ridiculously high number, not only would we have the threat to the green fields, but also the housing market itself would break, and we would end up with a situation that we've had previously. Mr. Mayor, I don't think that this local plan is perfect. There were changes that I would certainly like to have made, but in the end you've got to come up with a compromise. I think it does concentrate development on brownfield sites. It will hopefully meet the housing need that we've got in Pendle. And, you know, let's not pretend that we don't need new housing, because we do. But it will do so in a sensible way. Let's hope it's got legs. Let's hope it's got a long life. And let's wish it well as it goes out for its statutory consultation and then its subsequent examination in public.
Thank you. Councillor Nadine.
I think we're in a very difficult position here this evening in terms of the decision we make as a council. As has been said by previous speakers, I think we are in a position where we have to make a decision this evening. May not be the best local plan we all of us may want it, but I think that's in the current position we're in, that's the best we can do. In terms of the housing figure of 148, and all the information that's contained within the plan itself, I think with the change in the government and the targets that they want to set, the targets like houses, in terms of 348, yeah, 348 figure, I think that is absolutely ridiculous. And if that was to happen, and I agree with Councillor River, I'm hoping this does happen next and it will stay. If it doesn't, the risks are that we'll be back again with a far higher figure, and our beautiful countryside Greenbelt is under serious threat by the new vehicle.
Thank you. Anyone else? Could we go for the vote? All in favour? Thank you. Next is Lancashire Reversion Deal to consider the attached report of the Chief Executive. Councillor Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, although I am a supporter of devolution and the passing of powers and money from Whitehall to local areas, I am disappointed with the current deal that has been proposed by the government. This is essentially the same deal proposed earlier this year under the previous government, with no additional funding, and is not ambitious enough. While I believe that this will be best achieved through a new devolution settlement that includes all 15 councils in Lancashire, I understand that there may be a desire to move quickly to introduce some devolution that could be based around existing proposals and legislation. While that is not my preferred route, we are happy to work constructively in any interim arrangement that could be put in place. We will, however, ask for a clear and explicit pathway detailed in a formal manner which leads Lancashire towards a strong devolution deal that should follow as soon as possible with full governance model. I want full and proper involvement of all district councils, meaningful role and representatives in any combined authority arrangement with voting rights, and I want one member, one vote for district councils. That allows all our residents' voices to be recognised. To make a real difference in our borough, I want to see much greater devolution and the delivery of what we see as game changers for the borough, such as expanding M65, improving connections into Yorkshire, as well as the reopening of the Corn to Skipton railway line. I want the best deal possible for Pendle and Lancashire, enabling the county to play its role in economic growth and prosperity. As the report sets out, expression of interest is being consulted on, and I think we should show our expression of interest, which has to be submitted by 30th of September. Ideally, I would want to see what's on the table with the two models, with the mayor, elected mayor and not elected mayor. We need to see that fine detail, but time is short, so I will propose that we do at this stage have an expression of interest. So we are, we do have a seat on the table because this devolution deal is with the government's legislation, and then no doubt it will go through. And it would be better to be on the table, to have our voice, and to lobby as hard as we can from our point of view.
Mr. Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I delight in the fact that when you call either Councillor Tom Whip or Councillor David Whip to speak, you have a variety of invitations. So it's Tom or Mr. Whip. I'll just leave it with you. Mr. Mayor, I share the reservations expressed by the leader of the council, the disappointment about the so-called devolution that is set out in this letter. I have a specific resolution that I want to put, and we haven't discussed this with the other groups, so we will see what people's reactions are. I'll read it out, Mr. Mayor. I've got a copy so that I can just give it to you. You don't have to necessarily scribble away. So, Mr. Mayor, what I would like to propose is that Council, firstly, note the letter from the Minister of State. 2, regrets the continued concentration of power with the upper tier authorities as set out in the government's decision. And 3, resolves to put on record its opposition to the imposition of an elected mayor and its concern about the implied local government reorganisation. And if I can speak to that, Mr. Mayor, the letter in its almost penultimate paragraph says, this government believes the benefits of devolution are best achieved through the establishment of compliant authorities supported by a mayor who take on a strategic role. So, in meeting the MP for Pendle and Clitheroe last Friday, he made it clear that their expectation, the government's expectation, was that there would be elections for an elected mayor in May 2026. So they're going to plough ahead with that. In the penultimate paragraph, it goes on to say, I look forward to continuing to work with you to explore all governance models that reflect the geography, etc., etc., etc. So there is clearly, Mr. Mayor, if anybody wants to have sight of it, I've written it out there. Do you want to take it? So clearly, Mr. Mayor, the government is setting out its stall, firstly, to impose elected mayors, and secondly, there is an implication that they will be looking to local government reorganisation, the abolition of district councils such as our own, and if it's anything like the pattern that was mooted a few years ago, we would end up dominated by a Blackburn-led authority for the whole of East Lancashire. Now, this evening we've got Paul Preston who's joined us, and Paul Preston had the invidious experience, I don't know if invidious is right, but he had the experience of being sucked into the North Yorkshire, New North Yorkshire Authority, which is this vast extent from the boundaries of Pendle right across to the east coast and up into Richmond and down as far as the boundaries of York to the south. And he didn't express any view about whether that was a good organisation or not, as any good council official would refrain from doing so. But it gives the impression that it wasn't really very democratic and it was a bit unworkable. And I fear, if we're not careful, we're going to get sicked the same situation here in Lancashire, and the residents of Pendle will not benefit from being dominated by a Blackburn-led East Lancashire unitary authority. And the prospect of an elected mayor who inevitably, despite whatever we say in little old Pendle at the edge of East Lancashire, would not listen and fight our corner. So, Mr Mayor, it's not democratic, it's not devolution, and it's not something that we should be supporting.
Councillor Ash,
thank you, Mr Mayor. I just want to raise a couple of points really about where we are with devolution at the moment and why I recognise it as being a good thing for Lancashire. There's a lot of talk about...
Sorry, can't speak, she's until it's been seconded. Sorry.
Is anyone going to second Mr. Wick? Yeah. Tom?
Sorry, I wasn't sure who you were asking. Councillor Tom Wick is fine. Yeah, happy to second that. I think we've got to come at devolution from an understanding of the place, of the rural nature of the Pennines. We can't be having large authorities based far away in the heart of Lancashire dictating what happens over here. It's not right. We already get the trail ends from Lancashire County Council based all the way in Preston, and the same would happen again on a different level if we were based in Blackburn. So I think it is untenable, it is unpopular. If that is going ahead and we get an elected mayor and we have the new tier of authority, that's 6 levels of local government. Sorry, 6 levels of government, including the UK government. People already get confused on the 3. I think the 6 is far too many. So something needs to change, but I think the current way about it is untenable for me. So I second.
Councillor Ash, please.
So to pick up where I started, there's been a lot of talk about this issue not being ambitious, but actually the most ambitious thing that it does is bring together 3 authorities that never worked together previously. And I think that if anything, that's one of the most ambitious things actually ever done. In 50 years of local government as we see it, where we're currently celebrating across Lancashire with the 1974 Government Act, it's the biggest thing in 50 years to get that agreement together. Now we must forge ahead, working together to make Pendle this place and represent Pendle properly as part of that deal. I actually agree with Councillors Wick. Councillor Tomlin, that it does lead to confusion. I think we've got a leader of Lancashire, I think she represents us well, as this is political at the moment. That could be any other person. I think that having a figurehead for Lancashire is good. Whoever that figurehead is for the combined authority would also do a great job without needing to have a mayor. But one thing that we don't sort of appreciate, or possibly get overlooked, is the mayor has a preceptability. So could cost the residents of Pendle and Lancashire more money. They can draw in more through a precept. And generally having a cost of £100 million just to run the office of the mayor across the combined area. And so there's an awful lot of cost attached to having that, and I don't think it's necessary to have that. The only caveat to that, I would say, if the government insists that having it comes with other powers, as it does at the moment, then maybe something we need to explore to look at things like transport franchising, so that we can further develop the needs of residents. And just to highlight a very specific thing about one benefit of devolution, is the devolved power for the adult education budgets. I believe I'm for skills at County Council, and there will be a £60 million devolved budget that's currently controlled by them that comes to Lancashire. And that addresses the needs of the people of Lancashire. Rather than being told what to do, we can address how we spend that here. Now, we're very lucky to have Lancashire adult education based at North Atlantis here in Pendle, and they do a fantastic job. They are beneficiaries of some of that funding. If we can control that a little bit tighter and address the economic needs of Pendle residents, then that is an immediate win. That's just one small example of the many elements that devolution brings. So we're on that journey, we've got going, we need to have a seat at the table, we need to be a part of those discussions and represent Pendle properly. I'm looking at you, leader, because you will be currently the person that will be making those representations. We need to be a part of that. We need to represent them properly and fully and wholly to see the benefits of devolution. And I don't think it necessarily comes down to voting rights, but just having our voice amongst that combined voice.
Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, Councillor Sutcliffe talks about the current devolution and being ambitious that it's brought the top upper-tier authorities together. But that's at the expense of stitching everything up against the district councils in Lancashire. When I was leader of the council, we had 15 leaders around the table and everybody had the same votes. I had the same votes as, for example, the leader of the county council at the time. But the fact is that the agreement that the government have signed off now will adversely, in my opinion, affect areas like Pendle, because we talk about, and I'm not going to mention start debates about potholes, but if you look at the money we get from the county council in Pendle, it's poor. Now, if the devolution agreement, as is going through, the upper tier authorities will simply stitch things up amongst themselves, irrespective of which political party is formed. I was supporting the resolution moved by Councillor David Whip, and I think the government, and Jim McMahon's been the leader of the council in Oldham, represents a constituency in the North West. I think he needs to come and meet Lancashire's district leaders, and I urge the leader to write a letter to him, inviting him to a district leaders meeting, to have that discussion and hear what our feelings are as district council, because this is not satisfactory, and I'm worried that the way the government are going in 2026, there will be elections for an elected mayor. Now it could be, Mayor Mahmood or Mayor Ahmed or Mayor Aslam, who's the elected mayor for Lancashire. But fundamentally, we need to be responsible for our own areas, and I think the way the devolution has gone in the previous government and the current government, areas like Pendle will be left behind. So I would urge colleagues to vote for the motion moved by Councillor David.
Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I agree completely with Councillor Iqbal and indeed Councillor Whip's amendment. The truth is that we seem to have had a previous government which didn't fully understand devolution. The deal that's been signed off is I take Councillor Sutcliffe's points and some benefits, clearly things like education. However, there is at its heart a democratic deficit, and that is the lack of voting rights for district councils on the county combined authority. And so we now have a new government, and this government seems seems to have an even worse understanding of what devolution means, because sadly it appears that the agenda of the government is to try to impose elected mayors and to centralise, create larger local government units, as in the text of Mr McMahon's letter here, where he talks about achieving combined authorities, often across a wider geography, and continuing to work with you to explore governance models, as Mr. Bradley pointed out. So we have sadly gone from one thing to an even worse thing. We now have devolution, which appears to mean the imposition of centralisation and diktat from London in return for the odd devolved power here and there. However, fundamentally, it is an agenda which is essentially taking democratic control away from local people into, I think Councillor Witt mentioned North Yorkshire. North Yorkshire is a vast unitary authority where, you know, if you talk to people in Skipton, local planning decisions, these decisions are made often by people who have absolutely no connection with the local area. They may be based in Ripon or Scarborough or wherever, and they have no idea. And if that is the future of local government, then we will continue to see falling participation, democratic participation, and engagement from the public. So I absolutely recommend that Councillor Whip's resolution is supported. Thank you.
Could we go for the more for Nadeem? Councillor Nadeem?
I'll have to hand up this matter, and after what Councillor Storm said, I think there isn't much to add other than, I mean, devolution in principle is a marvellous thing. It's done correctly. I think when these discussions initially started several years ago, Councillor Bell, the leader, and myself, through the 2 years, the discussion was around one member, one vote. And I think, had that been agreed and pushed forward, I think that would be a really good thing. I think the devolution deal would be taken in the positive light by leaders across Lancashire. And I think what happened was that was taken away from district councils, that one member, one vote right. Having that real power to sit around the table, not just only participate in discussions, but actually having a vote and trying to make that difference. And that was taken, I think that brought a lot of trust. But I think in terms of what we have at the moment, I think that is the best thing we have. I think we should still do the best job we can, according to plan of work, within the deal that's on the table. But under no circumstances do I support election or local government reorganisation. So I think I'm in a position where I will be voting with the motion moved by Councillor Witt.
Could we go for the vote for Councillor D. Whip? Motion against the proposal?
So can I see clarification? So can I just see clarification exactly what we want for people to do?
Mr. Whip?
Mr. Mayor, I'll read out again. Apologies, the scribbled resolution didn't get very far, did it? So, Council notes the letter from the Minister of State, regrets the continued concentration of power with the upper tier authorities as set out in the government's decision, and resolves to put on record its opposition to the imposition of an elected mayor and its concern about the implied local government reorganisation.
Could we go for the vote for Councillor Whip's motion? All in favour? Yes, thank you. Again, any against? Next is the motions. Could I request from Councillor Wick, Councillor Yasser and Mr Stone to have all three motions as one, come to a conclusion rather than we go for all three separately?
Mr Mayor, I am arranged with Councillor Yasser Iqbal earlier on that I would second his proposal and withdraw the resolution that I put forward. So I will beg leave of the council to withdraw the resolution in my name.
Councillor Yasser Iqbal. Mr Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the spirit of that, can I propose a friendly amendment to not yet.
You have to move it first.
Yeah.
Right, I'll come back.
Thank you. Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, when there was an election in May or whenever it was, July 24, we thought that we'll see the end of the austerity and the pessimism that we've seen for 14 years, the lack of funding, the war against poverty, the war against poor people. But it seems that apart from names of prime ministers and people at the cabinet table, nothing has changed. They say it's the Labour government, but actually, Mr. Mayor, there's not much difference between this Labour government, or so-called Labour government, Keir Starmer's so-called Labour government, and what we've had for the last 14 years. And I think it probably is right that there is a black hole, whether there's 22 billion, 1 billion, or there are issues with the economy. But then to target the most vulnerable at the first opportunity, not even 3 months have elapsed, and to target the vulnerable who are at most need of the services of the government, of the people that we elect. And to target them the first target effectively of people that you go after is in my view, Mr. Mayor, shameful. Now this is, we talk about £200, £300, but this is, for some people, a real lifeline. I've spoken to many people, I've heard accounts on the radio, I'm sure everyone else has, that, and there's not many people, I think, in this chamber that are on the pension threshold. Everyone's quite young, and we're quite lucky this council to have young councillors. But there aren't many, but there are people outside of this chamber, and I'd even say that there might be some people within the council or within this chamber that will have real effects and suffer directly because of what is happening. We've heard on the radios to £200 or £300. Some people are literally on the threshold, Mr. Mayor. Literally a few pennies or a few pounds or £10, £100 over. And they are struggling and they are genuinely worried about how they're going to heat their homes. And not everyone has rich friends in the House of Lords. You might know of people in the House of Lords. Whether they've got a few £1 million to give to you is a different thing. Not everyone has rich friends to give you warm suits, to keep you, and clothes to keep you nice and cosy. And I said this at the first meeting following the election, that Mr. Starmer will not last very long. And I'll say it again, and I'll remind councillors here that the way he's going and the way his government is going, that this man is not going to last very long as a Prime Minister. His government is not going to last very long. Because instead of apologising and saying, actually, we've got this wrong, they are doubling down and they are not apologising to the pensioners. They talk about having the mandate. When was this discussed? During the elections. They must have known, everybody knew the state of the finances of this country, even the Tories knew the state of the finances of this country. So in my view, Mr. Mayor, this was very disingenuous of the Labour campaign, that they knew that there was going to be some difficult decisions, but they stayed very well clear from that. He said, did he not, during the election campaign or after the election campaign, during his victory speeches, that he would put country first and party second. But we remember, don't we, that when it came to the issue of the two-child cap benefit, the members of parliamentarians who voted against, he suspended them. So it's all talk about country first and party second. Actually, it's party first is what he's actually saying. So, Mr. Mayor, I'm conscious that I'm short of time, but the resolution is as set out. We, I think, need to inform pensioners about the available benefits that they are entitled to, and make sure that there are people, and we get that message across to vulnerable people, that you can apply for pensions, because the government's own figures suggest that many people will not apply for pension credits. And this is our job, with the government not doing their job, that we tell pensioners in Pendle that this is an option that you have, and also tell our MPs to vote in favour or against what the Labour government is now doing. Vote for the people, or the pensioners of Pendle, help them, support them, and I think that I'm sure I think I've run out of time, Mr. Mayor, but I set out the resolution in the motion, and I move as such. Thank you.
Councillor Wick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm seconding the resolution as set out. For anybody watching this meeting on the internet, there were 3 resolutions put in about the scrapping of winter fuel allowances, winter fuel payments, and we're combining them together. The facts are, Mr. Mayor, that there are thousands of pensioners in Pendle who are going to miss out. That is critical for very many of them, because they really are on the cusp of heating or eating, and they will not be eligible for pension credits, yet they are in very difficult circumstances. The gas and electric prices are due to go up next week by 10%, and that is going to be a fearful blow to many household budgets. So for the millions across the country, the thousands of people in Pendle who are losing these winter fuel payments, it really is critical. And it's particularly critical in Pendle because we've got thousands of very hard to eat homes. We've got thousands of households living in fuel poverty, and put that together and it is a perfect storm affecting the people that we represent and which our MPs represent in Pendle. But we've got a government that are just casting all that to one side. We've got a government of doom and gloom. After the general election, I think there was a burst of hope that there would be changes and that people could see the prospect of improvements. And all those hopes have been dashed. And we find, Mr. Mayor, that residents are disillusioned, they're not only deeply disillusioned with the government, but disillusioned with politicians generally, with local politicians, local representatives like ourselves, because their belief that things will change has been found to be a false belief. So, Mr. Mayor, this resolution sets out a number of things, and I think we're going to add a further one at least with Councillor Stone's friendly amendment, that seeks to improve the lot, change the government's mind, and if the government doesn't change its mind, do our damnedest as a council to make sure that everybody in Pendle that can get some help does get the help that they deserve. Mr. Mayor, I don't think there's anything else I want to add. I think it's one of the most important issues of the day. I noticed that the government are even riding roughshod over resolutions of the Labour Party conference. I think that's indicative of the dictatorial regime that we've now got in Westminster and in number 10. And I think it's utterly regrettable.
Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just from my point of view regarding fully support the motion, the only thing I would like to point out is that I've had residents from my ward, Walden and Forest, that are really pleased that the council are already active on social media and they're advertising how to apply for a pension credit. So I think the motion that is being put forward, keep promoting on that, because they are very impressed that the council are advanced in supporting them, and also the fact that they have, with the social media transfer of information, it's going very quickly around the villages, the towns, that they can approach the council, they can get support. But I fully support the money.
Councillor Nadine.
Again, I will be supporting the motion, depending on what Councillor Stone will do. It's going to be a friendly amendment. I think it is absolutely crucial. This is a really important issue for our residents, and it's important that it is unanimous, that we send as a council a clear message that we all unite, irrespective of whichever political group, because this is not just about politics, this is about real vulnerable people who are going to, unfortunately, going to be suffering during the cold winter months. So I would urge members to, whatever members, hopefully will take it in good spirit and we can pass a resolution that's unanimous. Thank you.
Councillors, Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would echo what others have said, and I thank Mr. Powell and Councillor Whip for bringing the motions forward as well. It is really lamentable that we are in this situation. Age UK says that the impact of this decision means that 2 million pensioners who badly need the money will not receive 2 million. Several thousand pensioners in Pendle who are not well off will lose this money. Public Health England tells us on their own website that excess winter deaths increase by 1.5% for every 1 degree Celsius drop in home temperature below 18 degrees Celsius. So we are talking in some cases here about the probability that this measure will lead to more excess winter deaths. And that's a very sad commentary on the Labour government and the impact that they're having. So, Mr. Mayor, my friendly amendment is on page 5. run by the charity Age UK. This petition already has over 500,000 signatures, and I believe that it would be useful for us to add that amendment to the resolution if that was acceptable. Thank you.
Councillor Yasser Iqbal.
Mr Mayor, I would accept that friendly amendment. So just so it's clear, on page 5, adding on the third bullet point on the section that says council resolves to.
Yes.
I'm happy with that. I'm not sure that it is legal. Can I?
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Right, as a pensioner, I thought I should declare an interest. I'd just like to say a few words, but the Labour government, it was elected on a mandate to address the cost of living. This seems very harsh decision, that's the way they're going to help us. It's especially unfair when we keep talking or hearing about a £20 billion black hole. When I heard it at the beginning, I thought, my word, somebody could say about them roads. You can get some money, some holes for them. But no, 20 billion. 9 billion of the 20 billion black hole has been paid to the public sector pay increase without any changes in any condition that they work. If they go ahead, and I if they go ahead with removing the free transport for pensioners, how are we going to get to the warm homes that we said we must? Because we won't be able to afford the bus fare. So, at the end of, I would urge every political party here to do whatever they can to ask the government to rethink this policy. Thank you. I rest my case.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, I echo Councillor Stone's issue that he raises about potentially the extra deaths that could be caused because of not heating the homes in winter because you can't afford to. Because housing and health and deaths are all related. And we see that every year because the viruses spread a lot quicker and faster, and the most vulnerable are affected the most. Mr Mayor, this is a retrograde step. It's a very all-right Labour. It is unnecessary, and I'm glad that the Labour Party at its conference yesterday in Liverpool wanted to keep the winter fuel allowance for pensioners. We should be putting measures to protect poor and vulnerable pensioners rather than taking away, and I hope the government changes its mind. This move could risk millions of pensioners being forced to choose between eating a hot meal or turning the heating on this winter. The means testing of the winter fuel payment in the way it is being done could push an extra 100,000 pensioners into poverty. And there's talk about the black hole, and to fix the black hole in the public finances left by the Tories, who have crashed the local economies and the national economy, should be taxing the multimillionaires and the billionaires a little more, which will not only easily cover the cost of winter fuel payments for all pensioners, but also generate additional funds for much needed investment in our health, education and social care services. And also if the big tech companies, if they paid their fair contribution towards the proper tax payments, I think again the infrastructure, the health, the education will be a lot better. And I know there is going to be an increase in pensions of about 10% next April, which I think will be announced later on the 30th of October when the new budget is set. And that equates to about £400. So that would help, but it's not enough to offset the loss of the winter fuel payment. So I will be supporting the motion.
Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you very very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the fact is that those pensioners will be hit hard by the start. Worked all their lives for this country. The reason that people like me and a lot of the people that are younger than me stood in this chamber is on the back of those hard-working pensioners that served this country after the Second World War. I mean, I wasn't here to vote for this general election, but my understanding was that the Labour Party's mandate was that those with the broadest shoulders would carry the most weight. The fact is that if Keir Starmer thinks that the pensioners at the broadest shoulders, they should carry weight, then I agree with him in that sense, but it should be the millionaires and billionaire pensioners that he taxes, not those poor pensioners that live in Pendle, because Rachel Reeves herself has said previously that the Labour Party would not tax or make things more difficult for working people or pensioners after the 14 years they're suffering from the Tories. But clearly the government don't understand that in Pendle it's a lot colder here in winter than it is in London. And if you want to propose the Winterfield lands for millionaire pensioners in London, I'm happy he does that. But the fact is that pensioners in Pendle have worked all their lives, they deserve all they get, and I certainly will be supporting the motion.
Comes through.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is almost a conflict of interest for me because I'm fuel director. And this would really be good for my business. But it's not. I just like to echo what we were saying over here, the fact that the cold, deaths due to cold, you read it on papers. I work with the coroner's office and we see firsthand. I go into homes in Nelson and in Colne and we find old age pensioners huddled around a one-bar fire that's been there for days. Nobody's cared about them. They can't put the heating on. There's no food in the cupboard. It might look a nice house from the outside, but you walk through the door and you're stepping back into the 1930s. There's damp on the walls, there's no carpets on the floors, and that's on your own doorsteps. That's in Colne, that's in Nelson, that's just up here. I was called to a house in December, and in January, and in February, and sometimes these people have been there for months, because it's only then, when the weather starts to defrost, that the body starts decomposing, and the smells start coming out. And I just like to echo, we just need the pensioners not to worry about putting food in the cupboards or switching the 2 or 3 bars on a gas fire or even getting the electric blanket plugged in. I think it's disgraceful what the government are doing.
Could we go for the vote for the motion put by Yasser Iqbal?
As amended.
As amended. Can I just have the right, extend my right to wrap up, Mr. Mayor? Thank you. Can I just, I think Councillor Hartley has just summarised it perfectly in terms of his real life experiences. We hear about these experiences, but he highlighted it, and I'm grateful that this motion, I hope, has unanimous support. I think it will, and that this is an issue which has been discussed with real life experiences, with real concern, and it is a real concern, Mr. Mayor, because this policy is targeting literally one of the most vulnerable people in society. And Councillor Hartley's right that actually it looks like they're in a nice house, large house, but to warm some of these houses up is not cheap. And they've got perhaps older radiators or heating systems. So that's something which I totally support. I'm grateful for Councillor Hartley to express his personal experiences with this. Councillor Wick said that his hopes had been dashed, to use his words, following the election. Well, he had slightly more hopes than I had, I think, for this Labour government, because it was obvious what was happening. The only reason they won this election was because how bad the Conservatives were, not because of the limited policies, because actually they didn't have any policies. I can't name one policy. It was change to what? We've seen the change. You see the change begins. Councillor Mahmood rightly refers to one of the Labour Party conference motions which has been carried yesterday. Keir Starmer left thinking he knew what was coming. But don't expect anything from that because principles, or Labour principles and Labour values, this Labour Party is just, they are, in my view, closet Tories. There's not much of a change, Mr. Mayor. And just on this final point, when I looked at the motion that Councillor Stone had put forward, actually it's very similar to what I suggested, so I'm not surprised that he's amended that and just had that separate section. And of course there was a reason why a few months back, or a few meetings back, I invited Councillor Stone to join the PTI group. We are, this is obvious, we are like-minded people, and I accept that motion, and perhaps we make him honorary member if he doesn't join. But these are the kind of motions. I've never seen Councillor Whitwell, correct me if I'm wrong, very rarely do we have motions from the Conservative group. And this is a motion which I fully support. Even if I hadn't put this forward, I would have happily supported that motion, because actually there's nothing very controversial in what it says. It's not partisan, it's very fair and it's to the point, and actually there's not much that you can disagree with. So I'm grateful for Councillor Stones to move that amendment, and actually can I also thank him for the time that he's taken to put this motion forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Could we go for the vote for Yasser Iqbal's motion, please? All in favour? Thank you. Next motion is misuse of fireworks, to be moved by Councillor Yasser Iqbal. I'd love to second that one. So, Yasser Iqbal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I think in certain parts of Pendle, in particular Briarfield and Nelson, I don't think it would be effective to target or specify their particular wards over the course of the summer. Certainly, I'm sure, perhaps maybe some members in Coleman or Rosewood have had the pleasure of hearing fireworks simply set up at 12 o'clock and 1 o'clock in the morning. But this is been one of the most serious of concerns for residents. I'm sure I can speak for most councillors here. Not only have we seen it on social media group chats, we've also received emails, text messages. When you see people out in the community, this is one of the biggest issues and concerns for people. And as I say, it seems to be centred around the area of Briarfield and Nelson, and in particular, I think also it's not unfair to suggest actually that it's around the people that do use it is where they've got weddings. They come back late at night and they set the fireworks off. Now, I don't have any issues with fireworks per se, as long as they are used within legal times, they are used legally, they're not misused. So, for example, if Councillor Ahmed wants to set fireworks off when he becomes the deputy or the mayor again, and I congratulate him on his elevation in a few years, I don't have no issue with that, as long as it's done within time. Councillor Faraz wants to get married again, and he wants to set fireworks off. But there's a time and place, Mr. Mayor. If it's done before, I think 10 o'clock is the cut-off point. Even if it's slightly later, I think morally and consciously, being good neighbours, setting fireworks off. I've had fireworks, Mr. Mayor, at 1:30 in the morning. Literally 1:30 in the morning. And I have young kids, other people have young kids, not only here in parts of in our wards. And animals, that's a serious concern for pets. And it's a regular occurrence, it's a regular complaint, and nothing seems to be done, Mr. Mayor. And I remember discussing this issue in this very chamber, or this council, at least on a number of occasions. And I think something needs to be done. Whether there's government action, I think as councillors we know there's very little that actually we can positively do to stop this, but we can certainly work with the likes of police and our own officers to try and at least address the issue so that there's a preventive measure and so people are dissuaded from doing it in the future. We've seen the local police of Manchester Constabulary, in particular Nelson, Briarfield and Colne units, have been publicising the concern on their social media channels frequently. But again, it's not enough, I would suggest. I think they need to go one step further and actually do something active. And I'm not criticising the police, I think I'm going to be clear on this point, because they have little resource, and actually it's very hard to police, because how do you know who's going to set fireworks off? Could be anybody. Councillor Newman might go home today and set fireworks. No one can preempt. I don't think you're going to happen. But this, what I'm saying, Mr. Mayor, is that there's nothing that you can do to preempt. But I think if councillors, I've suggested in my motion, the leaders of groups get together with the police, there are some ideas I think we can, which I don't necessarily want to publicise, but I think there are some measures that can be deployed for future months, mainly summer months, I think is the main issue. And I think it has to be a multi-agency response, not just the council, not just the police. If we don't address this, Mr. Mayor, within the year or by next year, they just carry on and keep getting worse. I'm not really sure what the fascination is with fireworks actually being set off, because nobody will be sending them the new couple blessings or saying things good things about them generally. And I generally feel, why on earth are you doing it such time in the morning? So I would move the motion and set out, Mr. Mayor.
I will second that Councillor Yasser's motion, and next is Councillor Dorothy Lord.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to second that. No, I don't think there's much that can happen, and yet something needs to. We had this discussion probably 10 years ago in this council chamber, and nothing came of it. And it was a big issue at that time, and it still is now. In fact, it's probably worse. So, even though I welcome this motion, I mean, I was talking to the police a couple of weeks back, and one of the sergeants said to me, you've got to prove who it is. So when you see a firework up in the sky, it hasn't got a label on it that says, this came from Brian Newman's house. I'm not so it's difficult. It's going to be very, very difficult. And do the police want to get that involved? Have they not got enough to do? And so. But I do welcome the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Nadeem Ahmed.
But we need to get the whole thing sorted so that there is only a certain time that you can actually use fireworks. Not just because it's 1:30 in the morning, you've had a wedding and you want to celebrate. Fair dues. Maybe that's okay, but not with fireworks. Thank you.
Councillor Ashton Mumble.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, over the last couple of years, complaints have not been limited to the bonfire night period, and starting then spring and early summer. And we as a council have been working with the police as the responsible body for enforcement of the illegal use of fireworks. And we have done significant work locally to inform residents of the law around out-of-hours use and use in a public place. Police have also been introduced in the lead up to bonfire night to educate around the safe and legal use of fireworks. This has not eliminated the nuisance, however it has meant a reduction, in particular around the violent behaviour seen on bonfire night in previous years. The illegal use of fireworks shows a complete disregard of the law around time and place, and of the disproportionate effect of using the fireworks in residential areas, on older people, people with disabilities, people with post-traumatic stress disorder, and animals. During the spring and summer, the police and council put out information on the illegal use of fireworks. However, identifying those responsible for activity which is taking place in the night and maybe some distance away is understandably extremely difficult, as mentioned earlier. Brian Sparks is a multi-agency approach to preparing for the bonfire night period, including a multi-agency command room at the Blackburn CCTV hub. What has become clear is that purchase of fireworks is from year-round retailers outside of Pendle, thought to be mainly in Manchester. Also, that includes fireworks not intended for use in dense residential areas. Although partners have had some limited success in reducing the inappropriate use of fireworks locally and will continue to balance prevention and enforcement approach, there remains no direct control of the sale or possession of fireworks purchased outside of Pendle or Lancashire and outside of the celebration periods. The key thing is for local residents and neighbours to provide information, provide the evidence to the police of the offenders. We'll continue to work with the police and local community to tackle these issues. And I think the key thing is providing the evidence. People know that this is happening. People know that they've got the evidence. People know where, even in advance of the occasion, people know where it's going to occur. So I think it needs a bit of it's a two-way process where the community needs to come forward and help us tackle this antisocial behaviour issue.
Councillor Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to thank Councillor Iqbal for putting this motion forward. In fact, it's the second excellent motion that he's put forward tonight. And I would like to acknowledge as well that Pendle's true independence are a source of quality motions.
I second that.
Could be all.
There's one other point that I did want to make, and that is a more serious point, but it's an important point. And I think that I'm contacted by people, residents, and so on, and we see on social media that there is, there are some residents who make this into a divisive issue. And I think it's really important for all residents of Pendle to see tonight that we, as Pendle councillors, are united in supporting this motion, that this is not an issue which is particular to certain groups of people. I know we're coming up to bonfire night. We will see fireworks let off at social hours by all sorts of people, and it's really important, I think, that all of us are seen to be supporting this motion, because it should send a positive message to all the residents of Pendle. Thank you.
Could we all go for the vote for Councillor Yasser's motion? All in favour? Thank you. Next, there are accessible meetings to be moved by Councillor D. Lord and second by Councillor T. Wick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 10 minutes ago, I almost withdrew this because it just seems so meaningless after hearing about the winter fuel payments and the speakers spoke about. But nevertheless, I'll go ahead with it. So this is about hearing or not being able to hear. Hearing loss is a hidden disability. I have a hearing loss. I struggle in many meetings where I can't hear certain speakers. Now, we're all at different levels with our hearing, and we're all at different levels with the way we speak. Some are louder than others. No, not I won't pick on you. But some are a lot quieter, and the quiet ones, if you've got a hearing impairment, you just can't hear them. So what I would like to see, there's only one microphone in this room, and that's for the mayor. Now I was going to say, and the mayor hardly says anything, but actually you said a lot tonight. You said a lot. But why is there only one microphone in this council chamber? We've all got a voice. We all need to hear each other. Otherwise, it's pointless being here. You can't hear everybody speaking. So what I would like to see is microphones, individual, like they have at the Town Council in Colne. I think they have them in the Nelson Town Council, do they? Or not? No? Okay. But in Colne Town Council, we have individual microphones for the Town Council. You can use them in the Colne area, but some members choose not to, so that's not really very helpful. So I would like to see individual microphones in this council chamber and in the Wilson room. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor T. Whip.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll read out the motion as seconding it.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right, Council notes its responsibility to make reasonable adjustments for people with disabilities. It further notes that some speakers at council meetings aren't audible to all those present, and that current arrangements for live streaming of meeting is due to be reviewed. Council resolves that the use of microphones and amplification is considered as part of this review, and that such facilities are used in venues equipped with microphones. Mr. Mayor, I was quite appalled to hear that at the Colne Area Committee, where microphones are available, some councillors in the Colne Area Committee refuse to use them, even when specifically asked by others at the committee to utilise them. It's just a simple button press. And I really think that's quite sad, because everyone should be able to participate fully in the meetings, and it's so important to our local democracy and decision making that everyone could participate fully as councillors. Now, Mr. Mayor, we are due to review the live streaming arrangements. I think it's an opportune time to consider the equipment we have available in our meeting rooms and to make the proper considerations for everyone involved at that stage. So I think this is a very ample motion at this current time. It's well timed. So I second that, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone? Done? Could we go for the vote? All in favour? Thank you.
Just to add
Next is Director to be moved by Councillor T. Whip and seconded by a councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is a perennial motion of mine that comes around roughly every 4 years, sometimes 5. I think there's never been an election so clearly showing the perils of first past the post. The rise of Reform UK and the split of the vote between them and the Conservative Party is such a clear marker in this country of the great divisiveness of politics, as well as the need for proper representation and fair results in elections. Now, Mr. Mayor, should I read all this out? I'm not going to read it all out, I'm going to save you all a bit of time. But in essence, we need proportional representation in Parliament, in local government. We already have it in Scotland, we already have it in Wales, we already have it in Northern Ireland. It's just England that's missing out. And I think that's a great shame, because it means that we get elections like we've just had, and where we've had in the past, where you've got a minority of votes deciding a very big majority in Parliament and driving the course of this country down a direction that the majority of people might not support. And I think that's wrong. So I hope everyone can support this motion tonight to see fairer voting in England. And I'm expecting Councillor Stone will very gracefully second this motion for me tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would thank Councillor Tom for bringing this motion forward. I will be equally brief, because I think he's probably had enough of listening to me tonight as well. However, I couldn't resist supporting this. For many years, I was deeply opposed to proportional systems because I felt that they produced too much concentration of power amongst small central-aligned blocks. However, it's been fairly clear in the United Kingdom that successive governments with large absolute majorities in Parliament have not always acquitted themselves as best they could. And equally, we've seen falling voter participation, turnout, very low at the last general election, the lowest I think it's been for many decades. And that is a sad reflection of voter disengagement and disillusion with a political system in which many people feel that their voice doesn't count and their vote doesn't matter. And so, for me, Mr. Mayor, I do absolutely welcome this. I think we need to look at a proportional system, one that maintains a direct link between representatives and defined areas. But I happily second Councillor's motion.
Councillor Yasser.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be equally brief as Councillor Stone. It would be no surprise to me that I'll agree with this motion and Councillor Stone's seconding. It's right to say that there's a large majority of MPs in this Parliament, but there isn't necessarily a large majority of people that voted for this government. I'll just make this very brief analogy. When Jeremy Corbyn stood for election in 2019, he got more votes than Keir Starmer did. But they said that was a failure, and all of a sudden, Mr. Starmer is a huge success. He might have more MPs, and this is a classic example, Mr. Mayor, of this system that we're in. It's a very unfair system, and I don't think it's reflective of what the country actually wants. So I think I'm happy to support this motion, and I urge you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Can we go for the vote? All in favour? Thank you, everyone. Have a happy night.
No.
Yeah, that's all.
Mr. Mayor, there were two motions that were submitted in accordance with the standing orders. They were circulated by email. They were omitted from the papers due to a clerical error.
Well, got one. I have read the agenda there. Right. Next one is health care facilities, to be moved by Councillor Chris Church and seconded by Councillor Susan Land.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the light of the background of hearing everybody shuffling the papers back in the envelope, I think I'd better be brief. And I will start firstly, if I could, interjecting slightly with the bit of good news that we've had for our end of the county, this last week that it looks as though the Airedale Hospital has escaped the axe of the possible government's review of the new hospital as planned. So at the moment we are looking likely to be having one. On the other hand, looking even nearer to home, we have the other news that yet one more function is to disappear from West Craven. That is the anticoagulation clinic, a very vital function, which means that, considering that alongside what we've heard in the last few months, that West Craven have not only now been told it can only have half a health centre, it must now be told that health centre is only going to be half full, because the function is now being moved to Colne, and that is where we are. I will just continue with the latter half of the motion, that Council reaffirms its previous resolutions on the need for a decent modern health centre to serve residents in the West Craven area, and resolves that this issue is escalated with the Health Service, and that Pendle and Clitheroe MP Jonathan Hinder is asked to assist secure a new purpose-built facility for the area. Thank you.
I'd like to second the motion, and I won't read all this out that I've written, but I have lots of memories of the Butts Clinic which has been removed, and these places aren't just important for healthcare, they're an important community asset where like new mums can meet one another, share tales, meet more experienced mums, your coagulation clinic. These are important for local areas, not just for West Craven, but throughout the country, where people from the local area have that community spirit and share stories and learn to help one another and talk to one another. So that's why I support this motion about the modern health centre. And again, not just for West Craven, but we need these places in local areas, as well as the fact that people can't afford to travel and keep travelling for these things. If you're a vulnerable person, you need somebody to go with you. So there's the cost of taking them with you, and time off work if they have to come with you. And the difficulty for people getting babies and all the paraphernalia on and off public transport if you can't afford your own transport. And again, the cost. So these facilities are really important in local areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marie Palmer.
Thank you. Other parts of Pendle have had modern health centres built over the years, and I think West Craven has been lacking a modern facility fit for modern times. A few years ago, Council with myself and other agencies attended a meeting to discuss this very issue, where it was highlighted the real need that residents have in that part of Pendle. And I think it's important that we do continue to lobby and support the new health centre in West Craven. We have had a previous resolution at this council which was supported. I think we must continue to have them discussions, get our new MP involved in that discussion, try and keep lobbying, and eventually, I know these things do take time because it's not a small thing that we're asking for, but it is something that is really needed and deserved for West Craven.
Thank you, Councillor Ashton Mahmood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I happily support the motion, and I think it's really important to have a modern health facility within the local counties, especially with the community hubs. You know, I think we looking at Barnsley. It's amazing what they've done in their patch, and I think we need something similar. Now you've got the shopping element, and you've got the health, new health centre, facilities. I think I think it'd be great for Barlink if that can be secured.
Thank you. Could we go for the vote? All in favour? Thank you. Next one is Advanced Engineering Economy, moved by Mick Strickland and second by David Hartley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Equally, I'll be as brief as I can with this. I'm mindful of the time, and I'm also mindful of the response that Councillor Hartley's got, 4 pages long. Council notes the strength of advanced engineering skills in Pendle. Apologies, I'm reading it from the phone from the amendment. And the strong contribution to the local economy. Council also notes that the bedrock of aero engineering in the area, Rolls-Royce's Bankfield site in Barnoldswick, where the revolutionary Whittle engine was developed, is the subject of significant downsizing through demolition and consolidation. Council believes that the skills in our area should be harnessed for a fresher revolution in new renewable energy technologies to complement the existing engineering base. Council resolves to convene a meeting with all interested parties and to pursue this aim and request that Pendle and Clitheroe MP Jonathan Hinder to support this initiative. Mr Mayor, the continued production and development at Barnoldswick site is also a vital lifeline to many other local businesses who employ a significant number of people from the West Brethren and wider Pendle community. These businesses depend on subcontracting engineering works from Rolls-Royce to survive and have done so for many years, who have in turn had a huge positive impact on our local economy and the wider borough of Pendle. Mr Mayor, I move that this meeting is pursued at our earliest opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillor Strickland, for proposing the aforementioned results, and I do not apologise for my thing, but it's not as bad as you think, because at my age I need big writing, so it's in 20 point rather than 12 point, because I couldn't read anything that was on his phone. So like many of us Barlickers, Rolls-Royce Engineering has been the mainstay of our employer for our town, with many of our relatives and friends spending their entire working life at the Bankfield site. But Bankfield site hasn't always been Rolls-Royce. It started life in an industrial weaving mill before being taken over by Rover, who developed the gas turbine engine, and in 1943 Rolls-Royce took over the site after their repeated bombings from the Luftwaffe in Solihull. Under Rolls-Royce's guidance, the site began to grow and developed the engines, including the legendary RB211 that powers many commercial jets today, RB meaning Rolls Barnoldswick. When I left school, the premier apprenticeship was to get a Rolls-Royce apprenticeship, and when I left in 1983, there were 40 new apprentices that year. Once you finish your apprenticeship, it was like getting a golden ticket to Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, where you were headhunted from companies all over the country wanting a Rolls-Royce engineer on their staff. In the 1950s, Rolls-Royce Barnoldswick employed over 3,000 people at its Barnoldswick site. However, that today's figure stands at just below 1,000. Many taking early redundancy and starting small independent firms to continue to feed Barnoldswick and surrounding areas with aero engineering companies. Such as in 1985, 2 ex-Rolls-Royce employees left to set up a company called IPCO, Ian Wetherill and Simon Shaw. In 1991, IPCO became Hope Technology and is the UK's biggest manufacturer of brake discs and cantilevers. Hope Technology is now on the site of Carrefour, and they are employing over 160 people. Their technology on their bike was led to a gold medal on the rostrum at the Paris Olympics with the Lotus Hope machine. We as a council need to encourage such endeavours like Simon and Ian did by inviting outside groups to become part of the local future. Encourage green technologies and giving future generations their golden tickets. Ian, by the way, was awarded an MBE in 2019. Aerospace engineering is constantly growing. Today's global aerospace market currently stands at a staggering 328 billion, an industry which shall grow forth by 7% and in 2025 bringing the market value to just over 430 billion. Many top companies such as Lockheed, Raytheon Technologies, Boeing and Airbus are branching out to future-proof their industries with also autonomous flight systems, artificial intelligence, deliverance of lighter and stronger materials and electronic propulsion. At this present moment, there are at least 250 electrical propelled aircraft under development. Why can't Bankfield site become an industrial mecca for everyone in the world, wanting those that have passed before? I hear you say, well, that can't happen. But in Newbury in Oxfordshire, it's been done. Small engineering groups working with Williams, Ferrari, Red Bull, etc. in small units are being dubbed the New Technology Valley, with firms moving out to the cities to join them. Many of our Rolls workers are down in technology now, leading the way once more, headhunted by people like Progressive Technology, making parts for Red Bull, Williams and Alpine Formula One. So why not give them something to come home to? We just need someone in power to help fly the flag once more, to be proud of the products which we need. We need our elected MP, Mr Jonathan Hinder, to be part of this process and look forward to bringing pride back to Pendle and bravely put our Air Force and give them the advanced technology against the Luftwaffe. So let's lead in the way once more and invite in new and exciting green technologies to work alongside our established firms and the sites that's already there. All we need is an influx of creativity.
I'm reluctant to raise and contradict Councillor Hartley after his excellent speech. Unfortunately, the number of employees working at Rolls in Barlick now, it isn't just shy of 1,000. It's gone down to about 400, and I think that's part of the issue, that we are losing one of our preeminent aerospace engineering company is downsizing in Pendle. And Councillor Hartley referred to both Councillor Hartley and the mover referred to the wider economy and the supply chain. Pendle is the borough of small, medium enterprise companies, and we have around 3,000 SMEs that support engineering excellence, a whole range of manufacturing, and obviously the jobs and wealth that creates. So I agree the importance of Pendle being the focus of new green technologies, and the fact that Bankfield site in Bonalswick, and I could show you pictures off my phone, but there is a huge space following the demolition of where the jet engine was developed, the test beds which were developed and were used certainly up until the 1960s, that they've all been swept away. There is a blank canvas, and I think that Morton is calling for that black canvas to be painted with the green shoots of recovery and the green shoots of modern jobs.
Councillor Ash.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I fully support this motion. I think it's really important that we recognise the strengths of local companies and also supports the local community in being able to access those firms and companies through proper education as well. And holding on the bits about skills, you're absolutely right. People have embedded skills within different geographical areas, And it's important that we keep hold of those before we lose them. And obviously those companies respond to the local labour market, the education is responsible for the labour market. So it's important we keep skills and education as part of that conversation. So as well as supporting this carried this evening, I would also like to offer my services to support this and bring in other people from a skills perspective, because there's an awful lot of work being done around apprenticeships, and sometimes companies don't always know about what apprenticeships support is available, and that could be the saviour of some of these smaller businesses. It's actually a lot easier for people to access the support that they need to make sure that you've got the right people doing the right jobs to be able to evolve their companies into the next generation. So that's fully supported and offer my services as well. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to briefly, I fully support the motion, and I think it's been touched on that, we've got some world-renowned companies here that make cutting-edge technology within Pendle. I'm talking about the skill side of things, they're very specialised skills, and it's crucial that, we keep developing those and keep those within, well, not just in Pendle, but keep developing main base to be within Pendle. And I think we touched this with the MP last Friday as well, a brief discussion on that, not a very detailed one. But yeah, we do need to pick this up and fully support the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Could we go for the votes? All in favour? Thank you, everyone. Now, have a good night.
Well, I've got a very common knowledge of it.